So, and if we look back at the knowledge-based view of the firm, or knowledge-based theories of the firm after Penrose, and after Thiessen Pisano, and after Grant, we found Nonaka's work from 1998, actually from 1994 to 2009. And if we take a closer look at all of these different works on knowledge-based view of the firm, Ba is one of the main components. Ba is a Japanese word that Nonaka translated as space, right? So von Krog in the West gave the name, translated Ba as enabling context. So Ba and enabling context are actually synonyms. So most of our research was trying to understand enabling context in the West, in the Western perspective. But if you take a look, a very good look at Nonaka's work through 10 years, you'll find that Ba is a main component. So we wanted to know how organizations were actually managing knowledge. That was our basic question. Okay, so what results we have after 10 years? Well, the main results suggest that, first, these organizations you saw were not managing knowledge, if you take it, through the philosophical perspective. But rather, they were managing the context and readiness where knowledge is socially constructed, produced, and shared. And the main, meaning that they were not managing knowledge, but rather they were managing Ba, or the enabling context where knowledge is produced and put to use. And the main challenges that they were facing were in change management, cultural and behavioral issues, and the creation of an enabling context that encourages the creation, sharing, and use of knowledge. So in other words, managing knowledge in organizations is fundamentally about creating an environment in the organization that is conducive to and encourages knowledge creation, sharing, and use. So this is our result in the Brazilian organizational context. We cannot say that it happens in the United States or Canada or Europe, but we're saying that this is going on in Brazil. And we have strong qualitative evidence of a major shift in the context of the organizations in our studies, from knowledge management to the management of Ba, or the enabling context. This is where the great issue is for Brazilian organizations and the world-class organizations we have researched. Okay, so after 10 years then, we decided to move and put some attention on KM models and frameworks and the process of building them. And we wanted to know what's KM's evolution, what's after knowledge management and tacit and explicit and Nonaka's model, what's coming after that. And we believe that there's a move towards social media and social networks, so we're doing a lot of research on that. And another thing we're doing right now is we are revisiting the firms from our original study 10 years ago. And our question is, what happened 10 years after we looked at their practices? And we have so many different research questions. For example, what KM models are organizations using? How solid is their theoretical backgrounds? Most important, how are the processes of building KM models being conducted? Is it a collective process or an imposition from the top-down perspective? Are we talking about knowledge management or about knowledge-based view of organizations? And is KM's next evolution social media? Nancy Dixon, for example, she thinks it is. So she's putting a lot of effort to develop those models. I'll show that to you in a little bit. So I'd like to show different case studies that we have conducted about knowledge management. So this is a very interesting one, Embrapa. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Embrapa is one of the most innovative companies in the world. It's the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation, and it's spread all over Brazil. A funny thing about Embrapa is that if you visit Embrapa in the south of Brazil, they take care of vineyards and grapes, and you spend a week there. And then you move to the north of Brazil, and you visit Embrapa cattle, for example. It looks like a totally different organization. So they have a very hard time trying to manage knowledge due to a few different things. It's all over the country, if you can see, and they deal with different things. So in this specific work, we were analyzing the process of building a knowledge management model at Embrapa. So as I told you, Embrapa is a world-class organization whose mission is to provide feasible solutions for the sustainable development of Brazilian agribusiness through knowledge and technology generation and transfer. So Embrapa has, a problem. First, it's a knowledge-intensive organization. Its units are complex, diverse, and geographically dispersed all over the country. So they face problems that are well known by everyone, because they are widely discussed in the literature. For example, huge knowledge loss over time. 65% of the workforce is about to retire in less than 5 years. Inability to locate knowledge, so they are constantly reinventing the wheel, duplicating efforts. The costs are rising, among others. So Embrapa wanted to think about a knowledge management model or framework that would fit its own identity, culture, history, and peculiarities. So this is really interesting. Embrapa was founded in 1973 and has generated and recommended more than 9,000 technologies for Brazilian agriculture. On the second topic, you can see that networking through 38 research centers, 3 service centers, and 13 central divisions. And 74% of Embrapa's employees, they have doctoral degrees for what they do. And Embrapa maintains projects in international cooperation, with organizations and governments from all over the world. So, if you take a look at Embrapa, as you can see, it's a highly functional and divisional-based organization, with the challenge of building a knowledge management framework to fit all of its specific units. So this is really a hard challenge. So for you guys to have an idea of the importance of Embrapa, those two authors, Filho and Avila, they use bibliometric analysis to assess Embrapa's research centers and their publications in periodicals indexed in the Web of Science database from 1996 to 2006. It's really interesting. The results indicate that Embrapa is among the top 10 leading Brazilian institutions in the volume of articles published in indexed periodicals, way ahead of the majority of Brazilian universities. So that's really interesting. So for this reason, for Embrapa being an owning organization, is that it was deeply needing a KM model. So so they had what they call a KM workshop. They took people from all over the country to Brazil's capital, Brasilia, and they spent time together, 1 week. So we had units chiefs, R&D chiefs, functional managers and directors, and we were discussing if they could or not have a KM framework for the whole organization. So some of my colleagues helped them, using different methodologies. So they finally came up with a model that is under implementation right now. And this model had the 3 axes I showed you before, and they put one more. But they have a different perspective. This is really interesting. So for them, they begin here. So they are discussing what kind of knowledge processes do we need. So this is their strategic conception. So they work on creation and generation of knowledge. That's what they do. The second strategic issue is to codify and coordinate, meaning tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge. They have to share knowledge because they have rising costs and they are reinventing the wheel every day. But they have a second problem. They have to protect their knowledge. Because, for example, they compete with firms such as Monsanto, for example. And if they don't protect the knowledge they generate here, if they have a leakage, for example, they can lose a lot of money and effort, and then use. So they define that for them, strategic knowledge process are those issues over here. So when they have to discuss enabling conditions for the implementation, the biggest issue for Embrapa was right here, social behavioral. Scientists, PhDs, professors, at least in Brazil, they discuss a lot about knowledge sharing, but they don't share what they know. They keep their knowledge for themselves. So this is one of the main challenges that they have, to convince people that they have to share what they know. And it's funny because they have all the tools we're talking about. All kinds of IT tools and managerial practices they do have. So they bought all the IT they needed, but they forgot to convince people to use it. So that's one of their main problems. They have, very good epistemic communities to create knowledge, and they have good institutional processes, but they still lack good information and communication processes. So when we were interviewing the organization, top administration, they knew what knowledge management was. Middle managers, they had an idea. Okay, OKM, yes, I heard about that. But when you get to the operational level, they didn't have any idea of what we were talking about. So what's interesting about their model is that they have the idea of the strategy, the conditions for implementations, the tools they need, and they also use results and assessment as a building block of their model in terms of both intangibles and tangible results. And they are building their own metrics. They have researched and looked at the literature, but they are building their own metrics. And if you notice, they are worried about different levels of interaction. It's not only about groups or the organization, but partnerships and networks as well. So this is the result of how the Embrapos model was built and how it happened. They're having a hard time trying to make it work. It's been a year and a half, but the problem is not about changing or buying more IT or more tools. It's about changing behaviors. So that's the greatest issue for them.